Well, good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast, Friday edition, the market update edition, news edition. And the last couple of weeks have been a little bit weird with the holidays. We have not both been here. I am half of the Real Estate Heavyweights. My name is Ashton Hines. I've been going solo for an episode or two. Tavis went solo for an episode or two, but now we're both back. So welcome with us today, Tavis Westbrook. What's going on, Tavis?
What's up? What's up? We are back. We are back live, man. I'm back. My feet have planted firmly back on the soil. No longer on a moving boat.
No longer floating. So
no longer floating.
Tavis for 10 days. For 10 days, Tavis explored all of the Virgin Islands that Britain has to offer, and he was there with two other couples. They captained their own boat. To my knowledge, you did not have to ward off any pirates. Were pirates any sort of situation while you were there? Did you worry about that?
They were not. They were not. Yeah, unless you just call a bunch of drunk people pirates, but.
some drunk guy accidentally getting onto your boat. Yeah.
I think the most dangerous thing is the New Year's Eve party at Foxy's with rows and rows of dinghies, and there was one area where it was like literally 3 rows deep of dinghies. So we got there early, so we tied the dinghy up to the dock, and then when we came out after midnight, there was 2 other dinghies, like layers of rows of dinghies behind us that had all tied up to the dinghy behind it. So basically the third person that comes in had to hop from a dinghy to a dinghy to a dinghy before they get to a dock. So there was people falling in water and, lots of casualties going on with that getting, it wasn't your typical New Year's Eve attire, because first off, you had to get from your boat to the dinghy dock on the dinghy, and you're probably going to get some kind of wet and sand and everything else. So it was interesting. There was a couple people you could spot out that were wearing heels and dresses and trying to look fancy, and we were like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
but I've got a video. You have to go on my Facebook and see it. I think I posted on New Year's Day of the dinghy dock fiasco, and I just did a quick little pan around. It's pretty impressive.
Yes, no one is really excited about a dinghy problem. So I do empathize with all the dinghy drama on your trip there. So man, it looked so awesome. I was jealous looking at all the pictures and the videos. It is a bucket list item of mine too. I actually had a roommate at one point that did that trip. I don't know, 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Man, that sounds so cool. And watching y'all go through it, it does look like it sounds like a huge adventure in one way, but you're also around a lot of boats. And so if something goes wrong, there are a lot of people around you. I sort of pictured this, I'm going to set off, sort of Christopher Columbus style, and I might see people again. And if I mess up, I will go way off somewhere. But it did look like it was, fairly well populated, and all these little islands you were telling me about. It's like, that was 15 minutes that way. That was 30 minutes that way. So it sounds like a great way to sort of get the experience in a pretty safe manner. So I hope to do it at some point.
I don't know if I'll ever go again during that time, because it was definitely the crazy busy season, the peak of the season, if you will. The last couple of days of the trip, it had dwindled down, right? There was definitely coves where there weren't as many boats and things like that. So I think people were going home after the holiday. But it, leading up to it and that weekend was just crazy. There was lots and lots of boats. The farthest travel that you would have, that we did, sailing over to Anegada, which is like north of the islands. It's kind of the furthest north island, if you will. And you've got to kind of time the weather properly, because if the winds are moving, you don't really want to sail that because it's pretty rough. But we caught it the day after the winds were up, and it wasn't too bad. And it was a little bit over an hour from kind of the area where we were, bitter end yacht club area, as well as Saba Rock was where we sailed from. But the day that it was pretty windy out, I think that was New Year's Day, and the winds were coming in from the north about 12 to 15 knots from the north, and so it took us about 2 hours, and it was pretty rough waters coming from Gray Harbor area, basically Yost Van Dyke, and then kind of heading over to the bitter end. So that was kind of one of our longest sails. But yeah, you definitely not. You can see land all around, right? It's kind of like, we're used to Lake Louisville, and we could sail from one part of Louisville to the other part of Louisville in 30 minutes. And again, this is all motor, right? We were on a motor cat. So we would average anywhere from 9 to 12 knots, depending on how fast we needed to go or cut through the waves or anything to kind of smooth out the sail. But, in Louisville, it's similar, right? It's about 30-minute trip if we want to go from Pier 121 over to Eagle Point, for instance. It's about 30 minutes, and you can see land, right? So it was similar to that, except we were in the ocean, and the water was crystal blue, and it wasn't nasty, muddy, Louisville Lake.
Yeah, you're taking a little bit of the romance away from me. So I appreciate the detail, but I kind of just want to think that you had to climb to the top of some really large pole every morning with the periscope and keep an eye out. That's kind of what I thought was going on. So you were likening it to sputtering across Lake Louisville. We'll sort of
it was
we'll revise history a little bit.
I guess that's a bad comparison. I just try to settle your nerves there a little bit, but
yeah, no, it was a lot more like Columbus and those guys. So I appreciate your sense of adventure.
There you go.
So no, I definitely want to do it. So well, why don't we get a little bit of an update of what's going on? I think last time I checked in, I was closing up my flip Mapleton number 4. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a realtor. I'm also a full-time physical therapist assistant. I just completed my 4th flip. It's my 2nd full-on flip. I use hard money. I use private lenders. I use creative financing. So I've kind of dabbled in a lot of that stuff. But I just finished my 4th flip. It was down in Dallas. I absolutely loved how that house turned out, and it honestly could not have gone better with the new buyers. The young couple, really good realtor. The whole process was smooth. They asked for some changes, but it just worked out. The morning of us selling, actually closing, funding, I was under the house in the crawl space for an hour, still pulling out some wires and some junk that supposedly some guys that I had hired had done. But it was just one of those things like, look, we just have to get this finished, and I want to be finished today. And that means me getting under the crawl space. And so while Tavis was taking in his 3rd hour of sun by that point, probably I was freaking out of every spider web I saw. So, kind of similar. But so while you were gone,
I hate to tell you I told you so, but we did have that conversation a few times about, have you gotten under the house yet? Because when you go to sell this house, the inspector is going to get under it, and they're going to give you a laundry list of cleaning up.
Yeah, those stinking inspectors,
a mess.
They tend not to miss much, but yeah. So yeah, lesson number 94 learned on this one is that I will for sure, if I have a crawl space, I will get down there and spend a little bit of time early on, just so I know what's under there. And same thing for the attic, because it's going to come up on inspection. Little bitty things come up on inspection. Our attic.
Well, just have your demo guys, get under there at the beginning, and then at least you're starting. Fresh,
and our demo
right?
guy now is pretty good. Yeah, for sure. So while you were out, I was helping out a little bit. You have a flip that you just started over in Wiley, and the guys that started demoing, I was helping out deliver tools and that sort of thing. So I got to go over there and check it out. Really, really cool house. So how did that process go? Managing stuff from out of the country, and then also you had an actual retail listing that was on the market. I was helping out, field some calls, and so you're pretty, for being in the Caribbean, you were pretty busy with real estate. And so how did that go as far as juggling everything? And did you come back to a complete mess, or did the guys do a pretty good job?
Yeah, the plus and minus of technology, right? Like uh, we had Wi-Fi on the boat, so it was good, but it was also bad because what I had ability to communicate when we were on the boat, but when you're off the boat, like everything was dead. Like my phone was doing very weird things and wouldn't uh, cooperate. And there was a lot of apps that didn't operate correctly, like my camera apps and security apps. The times were off. So there was at one point when I was checking the cameras and my kids were home, and I'm checking the cameras and I'm like, "Where's my truck?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "My truck is not there. Like, where is my truck?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? Your truck's outside." And I would go to the live video and it showed my truck. When I went back
Mm,
in the feed, truck's not there. It hadn't been there in like 3 or 4
hmm.
days. I was like, "What the hell's going on?" And I finally could check it, and the date, it's like none of the recording updated after we left the country.
Hmm.
So everything was a week in lag time, and it was during Christmas time when I had my truck parked in the back, and so it
Hmm.
wasn't showing up. So,
Hmm.
anyways, like I said, the catch-22 of technology and dealing with that. So overall, everything actually went really well. Thanks for your help. Just kind of fielding a few emails and things like that. But we executed on the traditional sale in Irving, and then it fell out when I got back in town. But we're now executed again as of yesterday with a backup offer that we had, so it should go much smoother on the second one. The first one was kind of a high offer, and there's always room that it may blow up. As far as the flip goes in Wiley, going really well. A lot was accomplished while I was gone, and really didn't have to do a lot of hand holding. What was tricky with that is everybody. We closed that project right before Christmas, and then we jumped on a plane on the 27th. So I didn't have a chance to really go walk it with anybody, and just kind of had to line everybody out. So we only really had one mishap, which was a bunch of baseboard got removed from the second floor that wasn't supposed to get removed.
Hmm.
And I noticed that yesterday, and I'm like, tell my guy, what happened here.
What the
He's like,
heck?
"Oh
Yeah.
man, my guy, it was his guy that went up there and just, following suit of what they were doing downstairs,
Just,
which was removing baseboards.
just,
But upstairs we
yeah.
didn't have to because we were going back with carpet, versus going in with a hard
Yeah.
surface floor where you remove baseboards and then put new ones in. So, anyways, that was one of those, you know, things that happens. But we'll make it work. That was the
Yeah.
worst thing that really happened. So I can't
Well,
uh
that's not too
can't be
bad.
mad at that.
Yeah, well, that's better. Of course, I've also made a similar mistake. Of course, you've had cabinets ripped out, but let's see, my second flip, I walked in. They were supposed to rip out the granite in the kitchen, and they decided this was a three bath house. They decided to rip out the granite, the backsplash, and all the countertops in all the bathrooms.
Ah,
So it went from being a really simple, pretty cheap, fix to a lot more expensive. So,
yeah,
uh,
and time frame.
communication and all that, yeah, time frame. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely empathize. It'll throw you off, but luckily it was just baseboards, and they didn't rip down some walls or something like that. So, well, why don't we get to a little bit of a market update? So, uh, in the DFW area, I've said before, our MLS covers everything over from Abilene up to Wichita Falls, all the way over to Shreveport, and then of course the Dallas area. And so it's a very large portion of Texas. So if you look a little bit more specifically to our area, the Collin County, which is Plano, Frisco, McKinney, and then Denton County, which is your Flower Mound and your Lewisville's, Denton, and a little bit of Little Elm, all that stuff, and then Dallas County. So we concentrate on those. So a few of the metrics that we tend to look at: days on market right now, Collin County, 28 days. That's crept up a little bit since we first started this podcast, but it's floating under 30. So days on market's 28, Denton County's 29, Dallas is 22, significantly less. The percentage of original asking. So that's the number that we look for. So are people pricing things properly? They put them out there. They go ahead and they do their research. They put a number out there. But then by the time it closes and we put in our final numbers into the MLS, how much of a discount was calculated in. The thing that isn't calculated in there are concessions and other things that have gone into the sale. So it's a little bit of a picture, but it's not the full picture. But in Collin County, we're getting 96.5% of original asking. Denton's very similar, 96.6, and Dallas is 97. So Dallas looking good. 22 days on market, 97% of original asking. So that's super solid. And then we also are looking at showings to pending, and that's how many people are officially going to look at the house until the house goes pending, gets a contract, and then gets through the option period, and now it's pending. So Collin County's 12 days, Denton is 10, Dallas is 10. So that's been similar, and Tavis actually pulled that number out one time. He said, yeah, typically it's about 10 showings to you get a contract. So that's holding true, which, if you're in the market to sell your house, the other thing that I looked at, I actually just went back 10 days. So it's January 10th that we're recording. So I went back 10 days, and at this point on our MLS, 1,073 homes have actually closed on the MLS since the beginning of January. So of course, some of those, obviously a lot of those were originated right before, but it's a slow period of time. I mean, but even that, it's like, over 1,000 homes have closed in the first 10 days of 2024. There's still a lot of activity. So if you're wanting to sell your house, you can still get a decent percentage of your asking. It's going to sell hopefully within 30 days. And, if you have a realtor and you're working with someone, it's like, look, we just got to get people in the door. What do we got to do to get people in the door? And so you got to know, hey, give you a little comfort. 10, 12 people got to come in to check your house out on average in order to get things moving. So how are you looking on I know you guys just went through that process over there. It was a little bit of a different house over there in Irving because it was as is, there were some issues, but you had a lot of showings, right? I mean, you guys had really good activity.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it. Once we went into contract, and where we were, I stopped looking at it. But it was into the mid 20s. The weekend of the of the first of New Year's weekend when we actually went under contract. So we listed it right before Christmas, a couple days before. Well, it might have been that Monday before Christmas, and knew it was going to be a little tight with the holiday and everything else. So, I mean, it took us about a week and a half, 2 weeks to actually go under contract, which, for this time of year and everything else isn't out of the ordinary. It seemed like showing activity really picked up after Christmas, and people kind of preparing for the new year. And then we ended up with multiple offers. So that was great. It seemed like, at first it was a lot of investors. It was a lot of kind of tire kickers. And, they just didn't understand the listing, if you will. You had mentioned with the engineer report that we provided, there was a lot of people that were scratching their head instead of like paying attention and reading the report or picking up the phone and calling the engineer. Like, it's not that difficult, but it was a challenge. We knew it was going to be a challenge putting this property on the market with the things that needed to be done and not having enough yield in it to attract an investor. So it was a tricky market to really grab a hold of and know that going into it, that, hey, this isn't really a fix and flip investor product. This is a consumer buyer that is willing to take this project on, and they can see value in it. And so, we had to be patient and kind of muddle through, the lowball offers and kind of work with, and I hate to even use the word lowball because I'm an investor myself. So I won't say lowball. I'll just say investor offers that needed to make a profit. Yeah. So I completely understand why the offer was what it was, but it just wasn't the right fit for this particular property.
It did not accomplish the goals of the people selling the house. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be insulting, but it was an estate. And so they had certain obligations. They said, look, this is where we are. We can't just completely drop the bottom out on this. And so, I think it's cool. I mean, it sounds like the guy who bought it is someone who's capable of fixing it up and has people in the industry that he has, connections, and is going to be able to make a good house out of it. And kind of what you originally said, hey, I think this is who's going to buy it. And that's ended up who got it. So I think it worked out really well. And you guys staged it and did the best you could. It's just a difficult. Not every house is, Instagram worthy and holy cow. Let me share this with my friend. There's just houses out there, that
Yeah.
have little warts and wrinkles and stuff, and they still have to sell. So as an
Well,
agent, sometimes it's like you could turn your nose up at it, or you could just really try to do the best you can. And it sounds like it went pretty well.
the goal is to get as many people in the house in the short amount of time as possible, right? And that's going to
Mm.
bring you a contract. And so that was part of the strategy with actually staging this home and taking, and having professional pictures done. I mean, all of the things that you would do with a home that doesn't need any repairs. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like,
Going
thanks for the
well.
market update. Sounds like things are going good. Sounds like more people are getting on board with pricing correctly, and with seeing these average days on market and the average days of contract to pending or listing to pending, it seems like we're having less issues with people pricing correctly and starting to get that dialed in. So that's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we get into a little bit of news? So while I was doing a new email I'm sending out on the traditional side every week, and we're so close to getting an email out for our listeners here. We we've hit a little snafu with the website issue. Turns out there's a guy in Arizona who refers to himself as a real estate heavyweight, and he has a website. So, we're trying to figure that out, but we'll we will we will have that soon, and we're going to be sending out an email every week that has some of the market update we talk about. But we're actually going to handpick a couple investment properties on the MLS and say, hey, this would be a pretty good flip. This would be a good rental if you could get it for this price. And so we're going to, you can kind of see a little bit of the underwriting process. So I'm really excited about that. But in my research for that, I looked up Redfin News. They do a good job of doing some reporting, and they actually said month over month there's a 10% increase in demand on housing, and the rates are floating around 6.7% for a 30-year fixed, and so we're definitely down from the highs. Now, interestingly, the job reports continue to be super, super strong. And so that does not really add to the narrative of like, all right, let's drop rates. I mean, they if job rates are job the reports are really, really good and everyone's feeling good about the economy, they were wanting to slow it down for a while, and how they were doing that was raising the down the line the rates. And so I don't know if it's just the bottom's gonna drop out, but it does seem like, especially election year, that everyone seems to think it will at least level out, if maybe not drop a little bit, which is bringing new people into the market looking to buy. That being said, is on a local level, it does seem like there might be an issue with demand for a few of in my opinion, first-time home buyers. And the first report was that apartment starts were way up in the fourth quarter in DFW. It's one of the hottest building markets for apartments in the country. And for the first time in a while, starts and finishes and availability of apartments outpaced the actual leasing of them. So there's an overabundance of available apartments, which has led to a slight decrease in rents, and people are starting to see more incentives. First month free will help you move, that sort of thing. And so I always think, and tell me what you think about this, Tavis, is that when rents and your average mortgage, let's say your average price for the area is 440,000 or 400,000, and a 30-year fixed, your mortgage there versus rents, there's a certain gap there that has to exist where it makes sense to rent. And if the rents start to get closer and closer to your baseline, then it's like, hey, why don't we buy a house? Like, we're just throwing our money away here. But if that gap
Mm-hmm.
is big enough and rents can be cheap enough, then a lot of people, it just makes sense. Like, look, well, let's just rent. Like, we'll wait for rents to drop. So I personally think it might impact, at least in the short, maybe the first quarter here, the number of people that are just really excited about jumping into the market, and they might wait to see if the rates are going to drop a little bit more. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I agree. I think if you follow the trends, I mean, the last 2 years when rates were extremely low and inventory was a lot less, and there was a frenzy of people trying to buy a house at that time, and then people turned because they got frustrated in the competition and went and rented, and so rents actually went up in value. because the demand for renting was so much higher because they couldn't find a house to buy. Now that the roles have reversed a little bit, the market's calmed down a little bit, and inventory's picked up. And even though rates are higher, it's now created, the opportunity to buy a house. And because rates are higher, the price points of what rents are, like you said, it's kind of a balancing act. So if somebody's got, cash to do their down payment, and they've got some equity, or not necessarily equity, but they've got some cash on hand for the down payment, things like that, then people are definitely going back into that now that opportunities are available in the traditional market, and the single family home market. People are, taking a stab at it and saying, yeah, I really want to buy a house. Let's go ahead and see what we can get. And so
Yeah.
I think that's changed. And we've been saying this the last couple of years, because there's a tremendous amount of new developments of apartments being built
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. McKinney, Allen are in one of the top areas that they are talking about in the article, as well as
Mm-hmm.
downtown. I think that downtown is still probably going to be heavy demand, because people, it's a convenience factor, and what you're going to pay for a home near downtown is going to be extremely outrageous compared to what you could pay rent for. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be interesting to kind
Yeah,
of
there's that
watch and
gap
see.
there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and God bless the people that, there's a lot of big companies, but I know there's some smaller groups, and there's a few guys up at the office that are into syndications with the apartments. And it's something that, I was really interested in for a while. But the way the interest rate environment has impacted apartment complexes, a lot of those loans were taken 5 years ago and on adjustable rates, and they are becoming mature, and it's just untenable for them. They cannot pencil those deals anymore, and a lot of them are having to go back to the banks. They're having to do these refinancing deals, and so the whole apartment industry, it's interesting to watch and to see how that's going to play out. But I'm sure it really does not help them that a lot of people were in the process of building. They went ahead and got their permits. They went ahead and finished out these builds, and now all these units are available, and now rents are having to drop a little bit. So it'll be kind of crazy to watch. Along with that is a report that the new build starts have exploded in North Texas. It's one of the hottest areas in the whole country, specifically Denton County, up in McKinney, near Denton. There's a lot of huge master plan communities where last year there was 700, 550, 1,100 units in one neighborhood being sold. And I also think that that's something that could impact the ability, if you have just a traditional home, especially if you're in a kind of a lower price point, new buyer. A lot of these builders have these incentive programs, and they've got a lot they can throw at people coming in the door. They can give them design center credit. They have in-house financing. They have these timelines where you can say, well, give us 10 grand now and 5 grand, and then we'll close it out. And it's really convenient. Plus, you have a place in the world. You have a house. You don't have to go out and battle multiple offers and run all over town, and it's brand new. And so there's just a lot of things that are really, really attractive. And I ran into this problem. I had a client out in east of Plano, and it was a big master plan community. They were trying to sell their house. It was a divorce situation, and they were under some stress to sell it. But they had overbuilt the new builds in that neighborhood, and they were sitting on all this inventory, and we could not keep up. Every week they were trying to throw some new incentive, and they were dropping prices like crazy, and we just dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped, because we had one lever. We had just the pricing, and they had all these other tools, and man, it was a real issue. So I don't know if you think about this, Tavis, but if you have a house that direct competition is new build, like if you're near a new build community or a master plan community or something like that, I would aggressively price early on, because if you sit on the market, chances are, it seems like in the first quarter, second quarter of 2024, there's going to be a lot of inventory, and they will use these tools, and you will have a hard time competing with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And we've seen this, we've seen this before. We've seen this years before, but they've been talking about this a while. With the builders having to get on the ball and really build up some inventory, because um, you've got homeowners that, like, for instance, any of my rentals that are, low interest rates, I've got several of them less than 4%. It would be silly to sell any of them, because the
Hmm.
cost of money
Yeah.
is so cheap. So, I think that's what you're running into is you've got homeowners sitting on, good equity, low interest rates, and that, again, the $1 million question is, if I sell, where do I go? And,
Yep.
they're going to increase, the cost. And so unless they have a tremendous amount of equity to kind of offset, um, the price, obviously their buying power is much different than what it is now, or
Yeah.
what they're,
Well, and I mean, and we've talked about before that in the United States, we're about 4 million, depending on who you talk to, 4 million, 5 million units overall short. We're still undersupplied. So they
right.
need to build new houses. That's just the bottom line. There needs to be new units. And, I know down in Austin, they're doing a lot of these affordable housing, kind of smaller, tiny-ish homes to where they're trying to get people in, where they're just building, 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 trying to get people into houses that don't want to rent, that want to have that equity position. So it's something that has to happen. But I know we got caught from a retail standpoint, really needing to sell a house, and it was just so freaking hard to compete with those new builders. And I can kind of see that situation lining up right now, where they're talking about they killed it in Q4, and there's a lot of supply coming onto the market. And now, maybe it'll all work out because the interest rates will drop another quarter or half point, and a bunch of demand will come out. People will start shifting around, and it'll really create this frenzy. But if we kind of stay locked up and all this supply keeps coming on the new side, it might be a little bit more difficult from the retail side. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see. So,
Well, you just
well, all
have
right.
to, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to get into that next part there, but so sorry. Um, so why don't we? It's 2024. It's a new year. It's a new you, and we were looking at trends in building, and we found an article that had 6 trends that they estimated were going to be popular in 2024. And so I wanted to read through this. I wanted to get your take on it. One of them I just think is so funny and kind of tone deaf, but um, so number one is that smart homes are here to stay. The pre-wiring of the video cameras and smart lights and energy efficient thermostats and all that stuff. Super cool. I mean, we've done a little bit of that, and on the light side, we actually haven't done it on the thermostat. Probably something I need to do. So I don't know. Is that something that you actually do when you're building? Is that something that you're working into any of your designs, or is that a price point issue over a certain ARV? Like, hey, I've got to go ahead and build this into my price, or how are you tackling that?
Yeah. I mean, again, when you're trying to work out your pricing, you've got to. It's a fine line between, you know, over budgeting and then pushing your margins out of the equation where you can't make the deal work. So I think you have to be very careful on, um, if you've got that extra, 10 grand in there, you have to be willing to like trade off that 10 grand in expense for less profit, So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be willing to kind of find that threshold that's like, what's my bottom line that I've got to make on this flip, and
Mm-hmm.
where's that buffer? Is it 10 grand? Is
Yeah.
it 15 grand? Where's that buffer that I've got to allow it to be that bottom line return that I'm okay with
Right.
if everything blows up?
Yeah. Well, and I think to me, the smart, now, if you're in a real high price point, if you're around here, let's say you're a million plus, you probably just need to go ahead and bake this stuff into it, because
Yeah.
it's so ubiquitous at this point, to where it's like, if you had just standard flipper switches every time you walked into a room, it would look cheap in a lot of ways. But, for where we play in the $400,000-$500,000
Flipper switchers.
ARV. Yes, I don't know what they don't call them rocker panels. What you know, I go to Home Depot. Hey, where's the flipper switch? But so no, but if you're on 400, 500,000, to me, this kind of goes along the lines of, it kind of puts it over the top. To me, it's like that LED light in the bathroom. It's not necessary, but when someone's walking in and maybe they're comparing you to a house down the street, it pushes a little bit of that over the top, and it's not terribly expensive to kind of give you just a little bit of a feel of luxury or high tech. And so I could see that where you're maybe not doing the whole house and you have this central hub and it's this crazy thing, but you do a few of the touches where it keeps up and it looks nice, and it gives that feel, but it doesn't absolutely break the bank. So that's probably
Yeah.
how I would play it if I was in the
No.
$400 or $500 range.
Yeah, and I
$1,000
think
range.
George hit the nail on the head when we interviewed him, and so did Mark. I don't know how much Mark went into it, but knowing Mark's his style and his finish out, and I've always kind of played along with this too. It's like if you put a really good product out there and you do a few things that are a little extra or a little unique, you're going to be memorable. Somebody's going to remember that house, right? They're going to say, "Oh, we looked at 5 to 10 houses today." I mean, the max showings you should ever do with a client in one day is like 5, because after 5, they just all blend together. So,
Right.
if you have, 5 showings, which one's going to stand out? Oh, you remember that
Yeah.
house that I don't know where it was, but it was the one with the LED mirrors in the bathroom, because it was unique. Nothing
Yeah.
else had it, right? So
Yeah.
it's memorable things like that, um, that I think are important, and they don't really break the bank. It's just it's knowing those steps. Like I'm doing that in this Wiley project right now, and I just had to do the sequence of getting the electrician over there before my drywall guys finish up on stress cracks, and go, "Hey man, while you're there, go ahead and drop those, those lights, down the
Mm-hmm.
wall so that I can put a LED mirror on it."
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
Yeah.
and
No,
so it's just kind of thinking through
I
some of
think it
that
adds a cool
stuff.
touch.
Yeah, I think I think it's cool, and they've gotten a lot more popular to be able to find now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
8 to 10 years ago, finding LED mirrors was extremely difficult. I had to like get a custom guy to custom make them for me, and
Mm-hmm.
now you can go on Amazon and you know
Yeah.
find them anywhere you want. So
That's where I found mine. Right next to the rocker flipper switch thing. All right, so number 2. This is the one. Okay, there's a couple of them on here. This one is I just kind of roll my eyes. Maybe I just don't even know. But number 2 on this list of trends for 2024 is eco-friendly materials. You got to be freaking kidding me. I mean, if you're doing a budget, you're telling me that you're gonna try to come within budget, but you're definitely spending more money on eco-friendly materials. There was actually a high-end Home Depot concept down in Plano, and everything they had was real eco-friendly. And actually, I went in there, and it was just outrageously expensive. And I was like, "Who in the world is here?" And it's closed. But it's if the idea of going out of your way to put some sort of real eco something in there. Now, if it's there and it's like, okay, it's similar priced and okay, yeah, this is a good decision, or I like the look, but I don't know. I mean, I think this is a little, me personally, off base. I just don't know that there's a lot of clients out there that are walking away from one house and going to another house because it's just, way more eco friendly, but I may be wrong on that.
yeah, I don't know how much I get on board with that concept. I mean, I think it's a trendy word. Um, and I think that there's a lot of things that have been set up to be more eco-friendly. Like most of your plumbing fixtures today are going to be low flow, right? Trying to find a toilet that is like a 1.2. What is it? I think I have like a 1.6 in my house, but they don't make anything above like a 1. Might be a 1.2 or something, gallon per flush
Yeah, they mandate
toilet
some of
now.
that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So a
Yeah, and
lot of
stuff is
that
going to
stuff
the
is
LED lights and all that.
yeah, so a lot of that stuff has changed. You can get crazy and go, "Oh, let's get into eco-friendly paint," the California stuff paint, right? That's like low VOCs, and you're going to spend a lot of money for that, and it's going to limit, the smells and the toxins that you smell in the air after you paint. Me personally, I love using normal latex paint to paint a house because it smells like a new house when you're done with it. Like,
Right.
and we still do oil-based enamel for the cabinets because I think latex paint for cabinets looks terrible. Um, Even though some people have gotten on board, and use the water-based stuff. And the worst part about that is, you scratch it easily and it just peels right off, especially
Hmm.
if it's not prepped correctly. So, yes, you have the smells that come along with it, but to me, it changes the dynamic of a house that's 50 years old, and you walk in and you smell paint. It smells like a new house.
Hmm.
It completely changes the
Yeah.
the smells that have been stagnant in the home for maybe the last 30 something
Yeah.
years. So,
Well, let me
um,
tell you what's eco-friendly, and this is number
yeah,
4. Okay, so this is eco-friendly. Remodeling over building new, and our interview coming up Tuesday, Jessica Starr, you have to tune in. It was a great interview. She helps people build new homes as a custom home, and they're the GC. She walks them through that process. So we talked a lot about building new houses this morning. It was really cool. But if you want to really be eco-friendly, keep most of what's there and just kind of give it a refresh. It's like that's like the equivalent of shopping a thrift store. You don't have to buy brand new everything. So just make do with a lot of what you got, and then go touch it up here and there. So number 4 is remodeling over building new, and I think that this is a trend. This is a no-brainer, especially with the interest rate environment. You can go get a HELOC, pull money out of your house, go ahead and do some updates. I don't know, you might be able to hear in the background our floors are being replaced in 2 of our bedrooms right now. So he's in there. We're switching out some floors and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that is a for sure thing. It's going to keep going and doing the remodeling thing and using the equity in your house, staying put. That's happened a lot over COVID, and people are upgrading. So I for sure think that is a trend. Now, the other thing that I would guess you could go towards eco-friendly is number 3 on their list is efficient kitchens. And I kind of see this in your designs a little bit. And I don't know if you ever went this way, but it says, gone are the days of the ginormous kitchen and kitchen islands and all that sort of thing. So I guess if there's certain spaces, houses that, require it. I remember going into it, wasn't, oh, I bet it was last year. I was showing people a house. We went into a model home up in Frisco. That thing had 2 kitchen islands. I mean, side by side kitchen islands, big ones too. And I just thought, I don't get this. I don't understand at what point in your life would you need double kitchen islands. But maybe it's enough of a thing to where they designed it and they put it in there as an option. But how do you think about that? I know you're a fan of kind of a little bit more segmentation, not 1970, walls everywhere, but a little bit more privacy and segmentation than the wide open, the concept.
again, it depends on the house. I mean, on the renovation piece of, if I'm renovating it, what's my plus and what's my pros and cons, right? Like if I open up this
Hmm.
wall, is this room still going to have a definite room to it, right? Meaning, uh, use Mapleton as an example. We were able to open that up, but they still had uh, definite spaces. So the dining room was
Yep.
defined, the kitchen was defined, the family room was defined. It wasn't just this wide open the door and you're in an apartment, loft feel with
Yep.
everything just wide open staring at you.
Hmm.
Um, I think, to me, it always goes to, I mean, the efficient kitchen to me is functional, right? It's all
Hmm.
about function. And, a lot of times with those big giant islands, they could not necessarily be very functional. Being over 6 foot myself and reaching across the table, or across the island. I mean, if the table expands much more past, 5 feet in depth, you can't reach the middle of that thing, and
Hmm.
most of our wives are like five something, Tabitha's like
Yeah.
5 feet. So she's not gonna be able to reach the middle of that island. So I think it's
Yeah.
important, when I'm designing and just kind of looking at things, is does it make sense? One of the things that it noted in here was just focusing on the kitchen triangle, which it should always be a
Hmm.
thing, um, to make sure that you can easily access the sink, your cooking area, and your fridge. Those are kind of the main 3 components. Um,
Yep.
And, one thing they're talking about here is pantry space or walk-in pantry space. And if you could do that, great. If not, then try to find some cabinetry, and build the cabinetry into that concept where it makes sense for storage.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, again, I mean, if you're flipping the home, you do it within reason. There's no sense in completely gutting it. Like, I mean, the house that I did, that's a midterm rental. We were trying to keep the old cabinets, but once they got destroyed, then it was like, oh, okay, we'll put new in. Let's go ahead and think through it. And we put some creative stuff in the kitchen that not only helps it for resale, but it helped it for midterm living, right? Because we got the spice racks, we got the utensil drawer pull outs, you got some fancy stuff in there that, makes it very clean, very easy to work through. It was easy for, a guest to stay there because everything has a place. So that's one thing I'm big on when I'm designing a kitchen is like everything's got a place that can be repeated easily. So you take a dish out, you use it, you wash it, and then it has a perfect place to go back to. It's not like you're fighting for space in the cabinetry and everything's getting disorganized.
Yeah, I need you to come over to my pantry because if there's one spot in my house that is not what you're talking about, is that. I mean, it looks like a small hurricane went off, and we just decided just to go ahead and leave it as is, and we're just kind of pick through stuff. So
pantries are another story. Tabitha's actually pretty good about going through the pantry like once a month and reorganizing it. And it's usually on some kind of random day or right before a big meal or, something that's not ever an opportune time, but it drives her nuts enough to go in there and be like, oh my gosh, I got to, organize this pantry. So,
yeah, we have to pull it all out and, throw stuff away and put it back in a lot. So a couple more real quick and we'll close up, but number 5, elevated living. They talked about, the kind of a rise in design with some balconies, which is kind of cool. Outdoor living space. The tone deaf portion of this one, and this is on the spruce.com. We'll link this article in our show notes, but they say that they do feel like the popularity of pickleball will lead to many more families trying to put pickleball courts in their backyard. I'm like, who are you writing to? I mean, how many real families out there have a big enough backyard and the disposable income to say, you know what, honey, let's go ahead and do a pickleball court. I mean, if I did pickleball, I would have to apologize to 3 neighbors over on a regular basis because we'd be hitting the ball over there. It's our backyard there's no way that would even be possible. But with a straight face, they put it in that article like, you know what, Jim, I really think
I
backyard
was like,
pickleball will be something this year.
I was like, did I read this right? Does this belong in this article? Because, out of the thousands of homes that we're talking about being built here currently now and that have ramped up from last year to this year, I guarantee you none of those homes that are being built have backyards to support pickleball.
No.
There's no way in a standard subdivision that they're thinking through pickleball in the backyards. It just...
You're not walking into a D.R. Horton or a K. Hovnanian design center and walking past the marble selection to look at the pickleball court selection.
We're not doing production homes with pickleball backyards.
No. The last one is they do predict that 1-story homes are going to make a little bit more of a comeback, which I love. I do love 1-story homes. The problem around here is just, I think from a builder's perspective, it's a larger lot, in a lot of these master plan communities, they're doing 50, 60-foot lots and they just have to build up. They're doing large 2 stories, they're cramming them to where you have a 20-foot backyard and they're putting as much house as they could possibly fit onto a 0.2 acre lot or 1.6 acre lot.
You're definitely not getting a pickleball.
So.
You're definitely not getting a pickleball backyard with a 1-story house on a 60-foot wide lot.
No. Now tetherball, if they want to bring tetherball back, you could throw a pole out there and we can go to town like that. Hey, tetherball, that should come back because around here, those are the types of yards we got going is a really mean tetherball game. So I hadn't played tetherball in a while. That's a pretty fun game. But all right, so as we're wrapping up, man, super excited about 2024. We've got a lot planned. Tavis has got some projects going. We're steady underwriting deals. We're trying to find something. I'm looking to pick up a flip. We were doing some goals. I would love to do 3 flips this year. I've set it a goal to do 100 open houses, and I just did my first one. So I'm putting it out to the world, and I'm posting about it that I'm going to do 100 open houses this year. So I'm going to be super active with real estate, looking at deals, underwriting deals, talking to people, just being out there. So I can't wait for y'all to come along on the ride as I'm continuing to learn. And as I'm helping people buy and sell in the market, and as I'm doing flips and working on the financing. Tavis is just now getting into the private lending to where he's doing his first project with a private lender and expanding kind of what he's able to do. And so we've got a lot of dreams for this year. And we also have a lot of really great people we're bringing on. I mentioned Jessica Starr. She's coming up Tuesday. We've got a few other people lined up. If you have not yet checked out some of those interviews, we're stacking them up to where I'm already super proud of who we've talked to and what they've talked about. You know, we've got really good feedback, super quality investors, and people who are adding a lot of great tidbits to people if you're actively looking to invest. So go back and check out those interviews. I think you'd be super, super happy. But in the meantime, you can check me out on Instagram. I'm the Dallas Real Estate Guy. Facebook, Ashton Hines. If you want to look up Tavis, he's Travis without the R, Tavis Westbrook on Instagram. He's got Tavis Westbrook Designs. If you have any sort of project you need design work done on, he can help you with your plans. He can help you with that vision. They can draw everything up in CAD. They can help you get started on that, and then of course help you do some work on the back end if that's really what you wanted to do. And you know, if you are a realtor and you're out there and you have a house that's not appropriate for the MLS, or you just want to get into the investment game, you need some help, send us that house. We can help you underwrite it. We can go walk it with you, figure out how you can make money. We can make money, and we can move on forward. So Tavis, I'm so glad to have you back on Planta Firma, not Planta Firma, Terra Firma, Planta Firma. Yeah, back on Terra Firma, you know, after exploring the British Virgin Islands. And I will go to sleep thinking that you climbed up on top of a very large pole with a periscope, because I just like that image. And I really hope that you got to do that at least once while you're out there. So,
well, and if it does you any favors, I mean, I've definitely dreamt the last few nights of, you know, task that needed to happen on the boat, right? So anything from dinghies to tying up lines to, you know, navigating the waters, you know, any of that's kind of been on my mind the last couple of nights as I'm sleeping, and like, I'm done with this thing. I'm back on ground now. So
yeah, we got to get you back in the real estate world, because you going to sleep dreaming about dinghies, that's not going to go over well for too long. So we got to get you back in the real estate world. So, well, man, so glad to have you back. You're going to have a lot of fun this year. Thank you guys for tuning in. Love you. Tell a friend, share it, send a link of this podcast to a friend. That's how we're getting a lot of our traction, just people sharing it with people that they think would like it. And leave us a review. That does us a ton of help on our algorithm and all that junk. And check us out on Instagram. We'll talk to you next time.